Today, on the 20th episode of the DTFprinting podcast, we're discussing DTF versus DTG, how to retain great employees, and the advantages of hiring staff members with disabilities. Welcome to the DTFprinting podcast. I'm Adrienne Palmer, Editor-in-Chief of DTFprinting. Before we get into this episode, I would love to get your feedback. You can always email me at adrienne@dtfprinting.com for topic ideas and speaker suggestions. And don't forget to like, review, and subscribe. If this is your first time listening, be sure to check out all episodes at dtfprinting.com/podcast. On today's episode, I'm talking to Jed Seifert, co-founder of Stakes Manufacturing in Eastlake, Ohio. Hey, Jed. Thanks for joining the DTF Printing podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited to talk to you, especially your journey with print on demand and DTF. Let's go back to the beginning. You got your start in the apparel industry in 2012 with Jack Prints in Cleveland, Ohio. And in 2019, you acquired the print on demand division of Jack Prints and founded Stakes Manufacturing with your partner, Vince Bartozzi. So take us back to 2012 and kind of tell us the journey from working with Jack Prints to diving headfirst into print on demand.
Yeah, so the journey actually starts way before 2012. So Vince Bartozzi and Vince Bartozzi is our CEO and my business partner, co-founder, have been best friends since we were 5 years old. So we've had a lifetime journey together as brothers from another mother. And, and our journey into print on demand space also started well before 2012. With our first business, which was a company, Music Skins, where we used to do skins for iPods, cell phones, and laptops, and had licensing deals with everybody from the Beatles to SpongeBob to Kim Kardashian to Muhammad Ali. We were printing everything in-house in our facility in Brooklyn. And everything that we did was print on demand because we had hundreds of thousands of SKUs from all of our different licenses. And there was thousands of devices that had shelf lives of, a year. So there was no keeping any inventory. So, we launched that company in 2007. And then we had, we were able to have a nice sale of that business sort of at the peak of the skin industry in 2011. And coming out of that, we had this business, this print on demand business model. We were working with, all of your sort of sports, entertainment, kind of pop culture, consumer products companies. And, we started working with, as you mentioned, Jack Prints out of Cleveland, who we had worked together in our Music Skins days, and started by bringing over just brokering screen print work for them, and then they got their first digital press. It was a Corny, and they were using it for sampling, and we kind of had the aha moment of like, hey, well, you can digitally print next to indiscernible from screen print, and we've got this print on demand business model, and this and all these fantastic partnerships. Let's build this print on demand business. So in 2012 is when we set out on that journey and spent about a year kind of just building it out, the technology infrastructure, the whole team that was going to support it. And then we went to market as, an enterprise print on demand company. I use enterprise very specifically because you have a lot of print on demand companies that work directly with small, mom and pop shops, and you have Shopify apps, and that's not us, right? We tend to work with the larger aggregators. So whether it's a record label that represents 150 bands, or an artist platform that has 10,000 artists, or a shopping cart platform, or other print on demand providers are actually some of our best partners. And it just kind of took off very quickly. Our focus was really retail quality. And that's how we were able to work with, the sports leagues and then, the Nickelodeons and Paramounts of the world. And then it just kept growing. And in 2019, as you mentioned, we had the opportunity to acquire the division from Jack Prints. So we did that and rebranded it as Stakes Manufacturing, recapitalized it, and then it took off like a rocket ship. And it's been an incredible 5-year ride thus far, although we've been doing the print on demand for going on, like doing quick math, almost 17 years at this point.
What's the biggest difference now with print on demand, or even from when you acquired that division versus 2012?
I think it's the same as the biggest difference across all of society, which is technology is moving at a faster pace than it ever has. So whatever the average time frame for innovations was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it just continues to shrink and shrink and shrink. So, what that means is you really have to be on top of technology, because if you take your eye off of it, for a year, you're already going to fall behind on the rest of the industry. And those technology innovations come both on the printing side, with the equipment, but also everything else that goes into running a print-on-demand business. Whether it's folding and bagging shirts, whether it's how you're doing your warehousing, whether you using AI and machine learning, integrations with suppliers, and how that all works. So we're just constant. While we are labeled a decorator, we still very much so feel like a technology company because of all the things that we're constantly having to do. I mean, even the way that we're even able to, hit Pantones through digital is through our proprietary file prep process that we're iterating on a regular basis. So it's I think it's become more competitive because there's more people in it, right? There's more demand as well, which is also great. But as it's gotten more competitive, it's become more and more important to not only be ahead of the curve on technology, but you're going to have to differentiate. And for us, our differentiators have always been quality, speed, and partnership. And that's what we continue to double down on and really try to build on every day, and try to make incremental improvements every day so that we're never getting complacent with where we are.
Right. I always think of the word demand and just how that has changed based on like the Amazon effect from customers and how they want it now. They want it how they want it. I ordered something from Amazon the other day and it came same day. And now if you look at that in the apparel industry, and I even noticed on your website, like we're not Amazon, but I always just think of that Amazon effect that has really amplified customer needs. Paired with technology, things can be faster. But I liked what you said, the speed, quality, and then your partnerships. Those are what is key to Stakes.
Yeah. And I think that, Amazon often gets sort of the evil empire type of thing. And don't get me wrong, they do create a lot of challenges, them basically getting everybody to feel like they can get things in a day or 2 days puts a lot of pressure on the rest of the industry. We also even compete with them for employees because they've got a major facility close to us. However, I think our culture and differentiation, we very much are the anti-Amazon, right? Where Amazon is just about a cog in a machine with no voice. And for us, it's about, really bringing together people to for everybody to have a part in our success and the direction that we're going. And Amazon has done some, benefits to people in the sense that, with doing print on demand and drop shipping, Amazon has gotten the world used to things being split shipped, whereas before people might not have been as comfortable with their order coming in 2 separate packages. Now everybody's used to it. So, on a business level, I think everybody has a little bit of feelings for them. But, then again, on a personal level, I can't stop myself from using them because it's so darn convenient. So it's a double-edged sword either way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so you were speaking about, employees and maybe having a little bit of a fight with Amazon. When you acquired the print division from Jack Prints, were you able to take on the majority of employees from that company, or were you starting from scratch?
Oh, the employees are the lifeblood of the business. I don't even live in Cleveland. I live in Bethesda, Maryland, outside of DC. And not that I would have moved the business here, but there was never even a thought about the potential of moving the business when we acquired it, because again, the people are everything. And part of the acquisition really included making sure that the people are included, because there wasn't I mean, again, that's the lifeblood of the business. And a lot of our senior level employees and down to even just, the operators come from years, if not decades, of print experience, whether it's screen print or litho and full color. So, the people really are everything in our business because we're an R&D company, we're an engineering company. So we built all of our own technology from order processing to file prep to integrations and APIs and how we do things. And we took a lot of that sort of tribal knowledge from screen printing and full color and brought that to digital to do things a bit differently than folks that just buy equipment off the shelf, use the manufacturer's RIP software and just kind of hit a couple buttons and let it go, which works great if you're making meme shirts and stuff like that. But if you're going to start working with, the level of clientele that we're working with, they're just expecting a different level of quality, hand feel, color accuracy, and all that good stuff.
Right. And you've mentioned before, you're always hiring. You recently hired Chuck Erzberger, SVP of production. And you're saying now, the employees are the lifeblood of your company. Why is it always, why is it important to always be hiring? And what does that even mean to Stakes? And even what does the employee count look like today versus when you acquired the division?
Yeah, so a lot of questions there. So I guess when we acquired the division, it was probably about 50 employees. Today we're at 250 at this time of year, and we'll likely be, closer to 350 during the end of Q3 and Q4 because volume obviously picks up quite a bit during that time. When I say that the employees are the lifeblood of the business, that's not just a kind of corny way for a co-founder to pat his people on the back. It truly is the case. I mean, our team has done an incredible job doing things that nobody's doing, meaning like it was 2012 when we created our first custom palette that you could print an inside neck tag and a chest print in one pass. And we were the first people ever to do that globally. Now you see the new M&Rs and Corneats and rocks, that stuff comes standard, but it didn't exist back then. We were Frankensteining Corneat paradigms with screen print presses to create the first cylinder DTG press before any company was selling that off the shelf back in 2014. So, we've always thought that we have to be ahead of the curve, right? You buy a car, for example, and something's wrong with it, right? They figure out that there's a faulty switch or whatever. They're not going to recall every version of that car. They're just going to wait to fix it in next year's version. And I believe that's same thing happens with equipment. So you're either in the line with everybody else, or you just say, hey, I'm going to go do it myself. So even with DTF, we've put hardware into our equipment. We've sourced our own consumables because we've got factories we've been working with for 2 decades over in China. So we sourced our own film and inks and powders because we really wanted to push the envelope of 1, making the softest hand feel out there. 2, creating a better adhesive so that we could do stuff like going over the seam of a hat or doing really fine details where, 99% of the DTF on the market is not going to pass, a Nike durability standard doing this type of work. And that's because of the chemistry we did. And let me tell you, it's not anything that I'm not the guy, right? So it's a fantastic team of brilliant minds coming up with ideas and figuring out ways that we can do things better. And lately, as you mentioned, we hired Chuck, but we've also had a ton of new hires that have been really fantastic as we continue to evolve our business. We just hired the former VP of HR from Custom Ink for years, who took them from, somewhere around a $50 million organization as they rose up to, in that 500 range or whatever it is exactly. So, we're not only we're trying to level up from a product and quality standpoint, but we're also trying to bring in people with years of experience doing what we do so that we can challenge the ways that we do it and just become better, more efficient, more streamlined, and again, try to continue to separate ourselves from the rest of the people in the industry by our quality and technology and innovation.
Right. I feel like we always talk about hiring because there's a labor shortage. It's always such an issue. But I think what we're missing is the retention part of that. And I think part of the retention maybe for employees at Stakes is there's opportunities to be innovative. There's opportunities for challenges, and maybe there's something new every day. But are you doing anything else that's really focusing on retaining those good employees, not only just hiring them?
Great question. I mean, I think you and I have spent a great deal of time talking about inclusion over the years, working together on the Unite Together board to try to impact change throughout the print industry. And as you know, my brother has disabilities, so disability employment has always been a real passion of mine, as well as our organization. As I mentioned, my business partner, he's been like a brother, not just to me my whole life, but been a brother to my brother his whole life. So in 2019, when we acquired the division and launched Stakes Manufacturing, our first initiative and our first managers meeting was that we were going to be an inclusive business. And that means race, religion, sexual orientation, the whole nine. But what often gets left out in the dark is disabilities, because a lot of people have these preconceived notions of what people are capable of. And, our initiative was, my brother got a job, that changed his life, gave him the ability to move out of my parents' house and create financial independence. So the initiative was that we wanted to provide other people with those same life-changing opportunities. But this isn't charity. You're talking about some of our best employees. So our top warehouse employee out of 40 is a gentleman with autism. Our top shipper out of about 35 is a gentleman with autism. And that's based off of speed and accuracy alone. No warm and fuzzies, right? And then don't get me wrong, you also do get the warm and fuzzies from it. So about 10% of our staff has developmental disabilities, intellectual or developmental disabilities. And then we also have a school to work transition program with the local county school system. So we get 12 interns a semester. I bring that up because for two reasons. One, there's a huge population, people with disabilities are the largest minority in America, and they have the lowest unemployment rate by a ridiculous exponential number. I mean, I think it's like an 80% unemployment rate. And it's not because they don't want to work. It's because people won't give them the opportunity. So, one, by opening up the door to the disabled community, it provides a whole nother pool of employees, which is, extremely important. And I think, one of the reasons I do a lot of these speaking engagements is to help people understand the model that there's disability employment service providers all over the country that will help you find, screen, interview, hire, onboard, and train employees with disabilities at zero cost to the employer. And will even train your managers how to best manage it. So you're talking about a free hiring agency and a whole, and the largest minority untapped population. So one, it's a great way to find employees. But then you start talking about retention. I think that people want to work for a company that is making a social impact. So whether it's, helping the disabled community or being eco-friendly, which is another kind of big thing for us, or whatever that cause might be, I think people want to see folks that are doing more than just, transactionally try to make money. So when people can come to work and see people's lives that they're impacting and changing on a daily basis, it gives you a lot of fulfillment. It's what stops people from leaving you for an extra 75 cents an hour to go work for Amazon, where they just feel like a cog in a machine. And I'm not trying to pick on Amazon, but anybody, right? The reality is people want to feel like they have a purpose. And for us, if we can take our passion of printing and change lives at the same time, it's a beautiful thing, because I didn't even think that was possible. I mean, not that you can't do cool shirts for charity events and raise money for good causes, but I thought you had to be a doctor, or a policeman or in the military to truly save, change people's lives. But the fact that we can take our passion for printing and our platform and create these opportunities, not just within our four walls, but help it industry wide. It's a real beautiful thing. I had one of my managers once say to me, hey, because he was the first manager we started kind of the program with. And it was like, hey, is impacting your performance. And he's like, no, they're some of my best employees, best attendance, creates a better culture in my department, makes everybody else work harder, helps retain everybody else because there's this purpose. And he's like, and before that, I was just in charge of moving cardboard around a warehouse. He's like, so, this is the first time in my life I've actually kind of gotten that level of fulfillment. So that type of thing is priceless. I think sometimes people can use, when they think about culture and like, you're doing work events, and don't get me wrong, we do like free lunch every Friday that brings everybody together. So everybody's eating lunch together. There's camaraderie and enjoy the lunch as opposed to leaving to go to lunch and all that stuff. But, culture is built by having, a shared vision that people can get on board with and a shared mission, and everybody being aligned. And I think that what also comes from sort of this inclusive and accommodating culture that we've created on the disability side is creating that same culture for everybody else so that, when people come to work, they know that they can come to us and ask for help. Hey, I need this to be successful, whether it's a single mom who wants to come in an hour early so she can leave an hour early and get it there in time for her kids, or somebody who's short using a piece of equipment that hurts her back because she's short, getting her a platform, but also feeling comfortable bringing ideas to the table of like, hey, I think we could do things better this way, right? So just creating that open, safe culture, I think changes a lot of things with retention, and it makes people feel bigger than just a name and a number and just an employee. So when you give people a voice, you give people a safe place, you give people a shared mission, you give people some level of purpose and fulfillment. And also we cultivate our people. A lot of our hiring, when we talk about some of these big name hires that we do from outside, but, a lot of our, directors have started, at the bottom and work their way up, right? So also giving everybody sort of an opportunity for advancement and growth. As our business grows, we want to share that with other people. We want people's professional careers to develop and grow along with our business. So, I think it's Zig Ziglar or whatever said once, like you don't build a business, you build up people and then they build the business for you. And that's something that we kind of really, and I might have butchered how he said it, but you get the gist. And that's something that we really try to cultivate. And I think is the most important for why people come work for us and also why people stay working with us.
You gave incredible examples of what culture actually means. And I've said this before, and this was a few years ago in San Francisco. I went to a networking event and kind of a speaker situation with the founders of the Skim, which is a daily newsletter. And they were explaining how they originally thought that culture was bringing in birthday cake, on a birthday. And that's it. Okay, we checked culture off. And it's like, it's everything that you just mentioned. And having that culture in a company is how you retain employees. And, you're not just, talking the talk, you are absolutely walking the walk because you've received the National Employer of the Year Award from the Association of People Supporting Employment First. So
yeah, APSE.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, we met through our involvement with Unite Together, which is a diversity and inclusion movement in the print industry. And you've also shared, either on webinars in the past or in our conversations, that you also create disability inclusion programs for other companies. So let's
rephrase that a little bit, because I don't want to take that much credit. So I don't actually create it at their business. But what we do is, I do travel all over the country and do speaking engagements. I've spoken at most of the, probably the last 4 or 5 impressions. I've spoken at Print United. We're going to continue doing that. I also go to other industries and speak as well. And my goal is to use our business as a case study to show all the benefits, all the ROI, all the cultural impact, but also to educate people on the disability employment support service model because most people don't know it exists, right? And they go, well, I'm not doing this because
Right.
I wouldn't know where to start, right? And so what we're doing, and this isn't just me, this is our whole organization and the other folks that we support, is not necessarily setting them up at other organizations, but other organizations will hear us speak or read about us, and then they'll reach out and say, hey, how do I get involved? And then what we do is we help connect them on a national level with some of the high level executives from a federal level as well as the private level, to connect them with local resources and local organizations that can then help support them and their efforts. So in essence, really just making an introduction. But yes, those introductions often do lead to these programs getting started and created, and it is one of the most fulfilling things that I have in my life, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's the awareness. I don't think many people know the facts and figures that you've previously stated about working with people with disabilities and the labor pool and the unemployment numbers. And also, I don't think they really understand the different roles and tasks that people maybe at your company are doing. So can you just list off a few different roles or things that people are doing in your company specifically for DTF printing?
Yeah, I mean, we have almost every role in the business. We've got individuals with disabilities. And I think that's often the misconception is, you think about disabilities and you think about sort of low skilled tasks. It's always repetitive tasks. So that's the other thing that's important, right? So people with disabilities and everybody in general learns from repetition. However, one of the big differences is people with disabilities find repetition home and comforting, right? So people without disabilities, and I'm going to generalize here, it's not everybody, but people without disabilities tend to find repetition monotonous and boring and then burn out, right? They don't want to do the same thing over and over 1,000 times a day, 252 days a year, right? And that's also what leads to a lot of turnover in those types of positions. Whereas you hire somebody with disabilities, maybe it took you an extra week to train them, but then that person's in that role for years, as opposed to you having a revolving door of replacing that role every 6 to 9 months. So huge spectrum of abilities and capabilities, right? So we've got folks that are working on $750,000 DTG equipment. We've got folks in our warehouse. We've got folks in shipping and quality control, water spiders. We've got folks that are on our tech team that are doing reporting and a lot of data entry. In the DTF department specifically, we have a large number of folks that are doing pressing, right? And when we started doing that, the first concern was, all right, well, we got these pallets that are 315 some odd degrees or whatever it is. Do we have to learn about the liability of putting people with disabilities in that role? So again, we work directly with our disability employment service provider to kind of do all the checks, figure out what we needed to do from a safety concern. And the interesting thing was everything that we did to prepare for that, we should have done at the beginning to prepare for every employee. Like all those safety things correlated to people without disabilities. So it also made us a safer organization. So we've got a ton of folks that are pressing all the time, or working on our zinc cutters, or pretty much every aspect of the business, right? And I think that's also the misconception, right? So when you work with these disability employment service providers, a lot of people come in and they just have this preconceived notion, right? So I'll use this screen printer, for example, that small, mom and pop screen printer reached out to me, heard me do, I think, like a shop talk at one of the shows, and said, hey, I want to hire somebody to clean screens and want to have a support organization locally so that I, can work with them on it. And I ended up connecting them with a local provider local provider came and did an audit of all of their open entry level positions. And it turned out the most immediate best fit that they had was a data entry position. And the screen printer was like, well, data entry, like, yeah, I don't know, I could put a nurse with disabilities in there taking, these PDF orders and plugging them into our system, because I'm going to end up printing, 1,144 units instead of 144 because of one accidental click of a button. And the reality is that, every disability is different. And we tend to focus on the disability instead of the ability, where people with autism tend to be more detail oriented than people without disabilities, right? So what that means is they ended up placing somebody with autism in this particular role, and they became their order entry folks, right? So, very meticulous to details, and it worked out great. I don't even know how they ended up filling the role of cleaning screens. It could have been somebody else. But our job as managers, leaders, owners is not to focus on people's disabilities or weaknesses. It's always to focus on their strengths, focus on their abilities, and put them in a position to be successful, while at the same time putting them in a position to mitigate their weaknesses or disabilities, so they're not impacting their performance and their overall happiness and fulfillment with their job.
Yeah, Strength Finders is one of my favorite things, favorite books and kind of programs when I have a team to figure out our strengths versus our weaknesses. And it's such a good reminder to people, focus on abilities and strengths and place people in those positions. And you will see a change in not only their happiness, but also your production and your quality of product.
Yeah. And that translates to, we talked earlier about retention and other employees. It's the same thing. So one of the beautiful things that we've seen, and I talk about a lot when I do these engagements, is that, this whole, you find somebody and tailor training for them, so for example, some of our, we hired a bunch of folks with disabilities don't read. Right. So having all of our training materials just text just didn't fly. So we had to get more visual cues, and we did more just sort of on the job training, doing and watching and shadowing. Right. What the managers learned in the process was they should be tailoring their training for everybody, whether they got disabilities or not, because everybody's different. My wife learns from, seeing. So she reads something, she's like a sponge. For me, I need to hear it. Once I hear it, I'm like a sponge, right? So even just that element in itself, right? Understanding your employees and training them the best way that you can train them, that shows them that you care about them and you understand them. And again, it will also set them up to be most successful, which will benefit your business the most as well. So
right.
Definitely works for everybody.
And you also mentioned when you were considering safety protocols just for those disabilities, you realized, okay, well, actually we need these implemented for all our employees. And that kind of reminded me of a conversation I had with Kevin Oakley of Stoked on Printing. I was talking about how safe is DTF. And when he came down to it, it's all about your environment, but your environment should be safe no matter what. All these precautions should be put in place, whether, you're screen printing, DTG, DTF, whatever. It's not just because now you have DTF and now you really need to be considering these things. It's you need to be considering these things in general. And that's kind of what you were saying too with the safety protocols. It's well, these should be put in place for all employees.
Yeah. I mean, there's very few things that we've put in place for our disabled employees that we shouldn't be doing for everybody.
Right.
And I think once everybody else sees you doing the things for everybody else, not just your disabled employees, they realize this isn't just, hey, we're making exception or accommodation for them. It's no, everybody tell us what you need to be successful.
And yeah, that just pushes in the whole point of retention again and again. Okay, let's talk DTF. We've talked a lot about business, which I think is always so important in the apparel industry in general. But DTF, I'm sure you started out with DTG, mainly on the print on demand side, but when did you add DTF to Stakes?
So we got in the DTF game pretty early. We were, before there was 30 booths at every trade show, doing DTF, and before it was a hot button conversation. as I mentioned, we're always trying to stay ahead of the curve. So when we first heard about DTF, we started doing R&D on it probably for at least maybe 4 or 5 years ago, or at least 4 years ago. We started doing a lot of research to figure out what we were going to do. Our first equipment was equipment that we had from Transfer Express, and we were the only people to have it commercially. We did some R&D on it. We had some challenges and wanted to go a bit of a different direction, and switched through a whole bunch of different equipment, and then even that ended up landing on Cultivating. I think we have one of, if not the largest fleets in North America. And even then, we still, spent a lot of time changing doing a proprietary file prep process and RIP, and worked hand in hand with Caldera and a number of organizations, and then built some of our own stuff. And then we even, did a lot of testing for consumables because we weren't happy with sort of the off-the-shelf stuff and wanted to make some improvements in that. So, for us, I think we officially launched with DTF maybe about 3 years ago, but that was already, a couple years in the lab in the making, kind of getting ready for it, maturing it. And it took off faster than we would have ever imagined. Today, DTF accounts for about 50% of our business. So 3 years ago, it was 0%. So, and the rest of our business hasn't shrunk. It's growing as well. So you can just tells you how fast this DTF market is growing and evolving. And I think it's still very much so in its infant stages. Anybody who's a naysayer DTF or, comments on hand feel or some of the limitations that they see with some providers, they're the same people in 2007 and 8 that were going, oh, this DTG thing's never going to work because the quality is too different from screen print. But the reality is it's just version 1.0. The first version of your iPhone software sucks too, right? But that's the point. You iterate it, you continue to improve, and you have to see the vision for where it's going. And the innovations in the DTF industry are moving so fast, right? You've got a number of companies that are selling similar equipment. Like, let's call a spade here, right? There's really a few major factories in China that are putting out a lot of this equipment. A lot of these DTF companies are just putting a new shell on it. Like, yeah, this is the blue one, this is the green one, and branding it as their stuff, right? And with DTF, the equipment's cheaper, which is also the big attraction to DTF, right? As opposed to DTG, where you might pay $750,000 for equipment, you can get set up for 30 to 50 grand on a DTF piece of equipment. But as that's just the beginning, right? How you use the equipment is going to determine your success, and how you maintenance your machines, how you prepare your files, how you're profiling your garments. Like, there's so much that goes into being successful with DTF, and it's also a lot more labor intensive than DTG. And there's other concerns, right? Where like DTF, you deal with more alignment issues than you do with on a DTG press, right? Because maybe doing a left chest or any of that type of stuff, or weird placements. So we're continuing to evolve DTF. We're continuing to do chemistry and working on how we can continue to improve our inks, our adhesives, our film, and how we can kind of continue to push the envelope. And I think that we are already doing that with, being able to print over the seam of hats, being able to print on backpacks and canvas-like textures that most DTF currently can't print on and still pass durability standards. But what it also means is that, the equipment that you're buying today is going to probably be outdated fairly quickly, because they're going to come up with better machines that have higher uptime, faster speeds, more automation. So it's very exciting, but it's just so early. But change is happening rapidly.
Right. And that kind of is a full circle comment at the beginning of our conversation, which is just all about the technology changes that are happening so rapidly. And as you're saying, this is also new. And so the more people who add on the technology, the more complaints or requests they're going to have from manufacturers, the more new manufacturers, or not maybe new manufacturers, but manufacturers we already know and love in the apparel industry are going to be adding DTF equipment. So there will be so much change, and there already has been in the last few years. But you kind of touched on it a little bit. There are people who believe that, DTG now that's just done. DTF is the new way. What are your thoughts on DTF versus DTG?
So I will disagree with them pretty adamantly. So I think that there's a triangle of screen print, DTG, DTF. And the gaps in that triangle tend to be on, the differences are hand feel, color accuracy, and just overall print quality and vibrance and saturation and all the things that come into making a beautiful print. I think when we started in this business, obviously DTF wasn't even in there, but let's just even when DTF started, that triangle was pretty darn big. But it is continuing to shrink and shrink and shrink. And the differentiation between the methods are continuing to shrink and shrink and shrink. However, I believe there's a place for all three of them, right? Certain designs are going to print better DTG than they are DTF. Certain designs are going to print better DTF than DTG. Certain garments are going to print better DTG or DTF, right? And both of them are chasing screen print, right? Now, I'll also tell you that there's certain designs that are going to print better digitally than they'll ever print screen print. Like you start getting into, simulation, simulated process, photorealistic images, super fine line details, things that don't translate well with screen print, that's come better digital. Now, however, the problem with DTG and DTF and why screen print will continue to be what it is you don't have the economies to scale. You're still doing a unit of one. So whether it's a 10,000 unit order that you're doing of the same design or 10,000 of individual different designs, you still have to load the palette every time. The thing's still got to spray the ink every time, or you got to pull the press down on DTF every time. So you don't get the same sort of cost savings and labor savings when you go to higher volume than screen print, which is why the prices also in that triangle are continuing to shrink and get aligned. But when you get into those higher quantities, screen print is still going to win every time if you can screen print it, right? And that's the big if, because we get a ton of big quantity orders that want to be printed digitally because it's going to print better digitally than screen print, or just because it's a rush order, right? It's like, hey, I don't have a screen printer in my network that's going to turn this around in 2 days. Can you do it for me? So I think that there's a place for each of them. I think a lot of people are looking for a silver bullet. And part of that's because they want to specialize on one of them because it makes it easier, or that's what they're used to. But for us, we don't believe in that philosophy. For us, it's about what is going to be the best solution for that individual order with that individual design, with that individual garment, color, material, and so forth. And, we don't even say DTF and DTG. We just say it's digital, right? And don't fall in love with the process, fall in love with the end product, right? And however we get there. And that's our job to do that. Oftentimes partners will think that they know what's the best solution. And even, my Cornate equipment, I don't use the same way that everybody else does because I have my own proprietary file prep process, right? I do other things differently. So I think that the people that are going to be most successful will understand sort of the SWOT, the strengths and weaknesses of each of them and leverage them for their strengths and mitigate their weaknesses. No different than we were talking about sort of on an employee level. It's just knowing where you can do it. And it's continuing to evolve. Like, we don't consider ourselves even a DTG or a DTF company. We consider ourselves a technology company and an on-demand company, because for all we know, there's going to be a DTZ that comes out next year, and then everybody's going to go, oh, it's going to start raising. Everybody's going to go crazy being like, oh, this is the new DTF or this is the new DTG, right? So for us, it's always just kind of staying on the forefront. But I think that where DTF is going, I do think that some of those fears are justified, because it absolutely is going to cannibalize some of DTG and it's going to cannibalize some of screen print. But replace, I don't agree at all at this point. And I think that until DTF, one of the bigger challenges with DTF is until DTF can truly find better ways to automate, to use less labor. That's the biggest challenge that it has as an industry. When you're talking about printing at scale, right? You're using DTF, you're just in your shop and you're just doing it for local sports teams or whatever, your schools here and there. But if you're going to run a facility, multi-shift facility, run large volumes, labor is the biggest challenge and cost of this. So that's really where I look forward to seeing sort of the innovation, automation. And some of it starts with, Rock just came out with their Impress, so you've got our cylinders. Now all of a sudden you can do those things faster. But there's a lot of stuff that goes into a lot of touch points, especially when you're doing on demand, because now you're marrying, a transfer with a garment and then getting it to press, right? As opposed to in DTG, I'm just grabbing a garment, going to press, and hitting a button, and it out pops it. So DTF, to truly get to even the biggest fear that you just mentioned, has to figure out a way to decrease the labor, or otherwise you're never going to be able to bridge that cost gap.
Right. I mean, I think that's the goal. Automation is the goal for so many.
Everybody in every industry. It's not DTF, right? It's everybody.
Right.
It's everybody.
Yeah. Like, automation is that goal. But I am curious, because you mentioned a few different variables like garment type or color or, et cetera, for how you would choose between DTF and DTG. But can you give maybe some hard examples from what your production manager is and how they're making that differentiation when that order comes in?
So I will give you as much as I can give you without giving you the secret sauce. So, because I think a lot of that is part of what we do, right? The simple answer to it is, if something's polyester, it's going to go DTF in our shop. And if it's 100% cotton, it's going to go DTG. It's where does all the other stuff fall that I think is really is part of our sauce and understanding, hey, this is going to be the best process for this particular garment and this particular design. Some of those decisions are just made for you, right? Like, if I'm printing, a Carhartt work jacket that has a canvas-like texture, or this Nike quarter zip, I'm just not going to be able to do this DTG. So it's the decision's already been made. But for us, it's about, that's part of what we do. Not only do we make sure it's going to be the best coming off of each bit of equipment, but we're going to determine the routing to maximize the customer experience. And we've got a lot of data to support the success of what we're doing. And I think too often people with an old school mentality are like, well, it's got to be one or the other. And, and then you've got even buyers who are like, well, I can't have somebody buying one shirt that's DTG and another shirt that's DTF. And you're like, yeah, you can. As long as the quality's there, the quality's there, right? And it's that was sort of the half answer to the question without divulging too much and getting the call from my business partner that I have loose lips.
All right. Yeah. I don't want you to get in trouble there at all. And I appreciate you half answering the question, because it is true. I mean, I think this industry, we are like so open and welcome to sharing, but there is a little bit of that's like, oh, we don't want to go too far. We don't want to share that secret sauce. So I totally understand.
And in some capacities, we use both, right? So like when Caitlin Clark broke the NCAA record for most points scored at Iowa, we did the shirts for Nike for the event, and her family was wearing it at the game. Travis Scott, the rapper, was wearing it at the game. And it was a very cool shirt, right? And for that shirt, you know, some of the swooshes had to be done DTF, but the front image of Caitlin Clark really, because of all the gradients and things that were going on, just was going to translate much better DTG. So you've got a single shirt with 4 different locations, and 3 locations are being done DTF and 1 location is being done DTG, right? So that's not necessarily the norm, but that also kind of shows you that there's like, sometimes it's not even just pick the right mousetrap for the one thing. It might be, let's use both of them to figure it out, right?
And why not? I mean, if you have the technology, you can kind of play around with that. I think that's also what's fun about this is there's troubleshooting and there's figuring things out. There's also, you know, deciding, well, we're going to use both and it's going to have the best quality of product. How much of your business is printing for screen printers?
A surprising amount. A surprising amount to most people, because I think a lot of people, well, not just screen printers. So let's also step back. So because we're only an enterprise business, we're only B2B, we don't compete for the end consumer. We don't compete for the individual brand or, you know, individual property or whatever. So what that means is we've kind of positioned ourselves as Switzerland, which means we print for a lot of folks that you might think would be our competitors because they're also print on demand companies, right? So like we print for Custom Ink and we print for Vistaprint and Printful and a number of other folks, you know, during doing different stuff and adding value because we don't compete for their clients. And it's the same thing with screen printers, right? So I would say half of our 10 biggest partners print for themselves. And some of those are doing digital for themselves. Some of them are doing screen. And then we also work with some just total screen printers, right? And the total screen printer folks are typically, you know, sending us the work that they don't want to do, which is, you know, lower quantity, higher color count. So not necessarily the individual units of one, but they're sending us a lot of that sort of outsourced work that is either cost prohibitive for them to do, operationally inefficient for them. Maybe they're even turning that work away, but now they want to start capturing it because they turn away the small orders that, you know, they don't want to hang and bang screens for. Then that partner could then take their big orders to whoever's going to service the small orders. So everything we do is white labeled. So Stakes never shows up on anything that we ship or print. So quite a few screen printers, you know, we work with. We also work with other DTF printers, right? You know, I think we have a number of partners who, you know, wanted to get in DTF, bought some DTF equipment, and, you know, maybe believed the marketing pamphlet from the company that they bought that they were just going to plug it in and start printing money. And then they got into all the complications of maintenance and labor and, you know, color profiling, linearization, all that stuff. And they're like, can we just outsource this to somebody? Organically, we never really planned to go into this business, but because we did so many things to solve sort of the negative connotation with DTF of making it softer hand feel, getting rid of sort of the limitations on sort of the substrate so we could be substrate agnostic. Word got around and all of a sudden people started reaching out to us and saying, hey, can we just buy transfers from you guys? Like we don't actually want, you know, because everything else that we do is full package where we're selling the garment and the decoration as one unit. We're integrated with all the major suppliers and so forth. And then people started saying, hey, can I just buy individual transfers from you guys? Because, you know, we're seeing a better quality. So then organically we had this whole new business unit. And then as that continued to grow, then people started saying, hey, can we just buy rolls of transfers from you instead of these cut ones? And then that grew a whole nother side of the business, right? So it's definitely been interesting to see how those units have evolved and sort of where we are in DTF has continued to evolve.
Right. Yeah. Some DTF printers are not even touching the garment at all. They're just printing transfers constantly. And so
some
that's just another sector.
Some are just pressing, some are doing neither and just selling it. Right. And and there's a lane for everybody. Right.
What are your tips for people who are looking to find good outsourcing partners? I've had conversations even, in like the screen printing industry, I guess the apparel industry, and in total, it's like, we found these people, they were local, so we used them, but then the quality was poor. Or we found some people and like, honestly, the turnaround time was not so great. So, you kind of being on the other end of it, do you have any tips for what that relationship should look like?
Yeah. So I am admittedly going to have a bias here. Okay. As co-founder of a company that people outsource to. But I think that, look, you can find great partners in all shapes and sizes, but it really depends on your business and what your business needs are. And you need to be very aware of that, right? If you're just looking for an outsourced printer and you're just a one-man show and you've got very low volumes, maybe working with that small local provider that you've got, you got a great relationship with is a good fit for you. However, if you're looking to really grow a significant business, right, and you're looking to scale, there's still only, a handful of folks that can produce DTF at scale. We're talking thousands of units a day or even hundreds of units a day. And the issue is when you work with a smaller provider, you're going to have less equipment, less redundancy. You're going to have more risk, especially because everybody gets busy at the same times, right? So it's like, sure, everybody's good at performing at the end of January, right? Because it's slow for everybody, right? It's how are people performing during the busiest times of year is truly how you decide, who you're going to be. So I think, I think the size helps because then that these folks, there's no mom and pop shop that has an 8-person full-time maintenance team that's, multiple shifts a day that's servicing our own equipment, right? Those type of things you get from these more sort of mature, large organizations, right? The other thing is quality, right? You've got to do sampling to understand what the quality is going to be. And oftentimes sampling should be your artwork, right? Not just like I give you my can design that, I fine-tuned in the lab for, a long time to go, oh, this is perfect. Well, everybody, not everybody, but it's a lot easier to make a sample perfect than it is to make the live production orders. And what is that consistency going to be? So also understanding who they already work with, right? So for us, it makes my job pretty easy as, kind of the leader in the partnership side of our business when, I could tell people that I'm printing for, the Beatles and SpongeBob and, all these folks, because immediately they know, okay, that's retail quality and those guys won't work with you if you can't hit the colors and you don't have the quality and you're not there, right? So it kind of immediately legitimizes you because people know that you've already been put through the ringer. So I think understanding that is great. But again, that doesn't mean there's not going to be other upstart companies that don't have this resume of partners yet, but are still doing great work, right? I think all too often people value local, and I'm a local guy, right? I love that we build our local community in Cleveland. I love that we work with school systems, local businesses and all that. But we're in a world that it doesn't really matter where you are, right? It actually matters where you are more based off of the end consumer, right? So let's say you're in Florida, you have a local guy. Well, should you use a local guy? Because I know from Cleveland, and we can hit 70% of the U.S. population within a 2-day ground ship. Whereas that number from being at a Florida facility is going to be a small fraction that you could hit with a 2-day ship, right? So I'd rather have somebody centrally located to hit all my customers than just have somebody that's local. Because at the end of the day, sometimes I'll hear, well, I get to go over their shop, see what's going on. Like, that's actually a problem. The fact that you feel the need to even go over their shop and have that level of oversight there's some trust issues. Or even if there's not trust issues, if you wouldn't have to do that, what could you be doing to grow your business during that time, right? So I think just understanding who they work with, doing a thorough sampling process, understanding their scale and redundancy, also understanding their level of maintenance team, because, unlike DTG, you buy a $750,000 press, they'll fly people out regularly to help you maintenance stuff. You spend 30, 40 G's on a piece of equipment. How many times can they fly somebody out to help you before they're losing money on you as an account, right? So just understanding all of that is what matters, because, you have to have somebody that you could trust from a quality, scale, and partnership. And then once you are partners with somebody, I think the biggest judge of a good partnership is not when things are going well. It's how do you handle when things get screwed up? And I think that's what makes true partnerships on both sides, right? How does that outsourced decorator jump through hoops to fix their things and fall on their sword and own it and resolve situations when you have them? But also, as the person that's outsourcing, how do you deal with it, right? Something goes wrong. Do you call your decorator and just start screaming at them? Or are you solution oriented and start working with them? Because I'm too old to work with people who are going to call us and scream at us. It's just, we're past that, because it's not good for anybody. And we don't even know whose fault it is. And who cares whose fault it is? Let's just fix the situation. So we will always own that, fix it. If it's our fault, shit, even if it's their fault, we're going to do everything in our power to jump through hoops to fix it. But that's what I think real partnership is built on. Not when, everything's gumdrops and rainbows. When things are going well, it's easy to be good partners with people, just like it's easy to be good when you're during the slow season versus the busy season. So that type of consistency in the partnership and performance, I think, is what gives true partnership longevity.
And I think you're a prime example of that. Your business partners with your best friend since you were 5 years old. So if anyone can go through the ups and downs of not only life, but business and, come out on top, I think that you're a shining example of figuring all of that out.
We spend more time working than we do anything else in our life. We spend more time working than we sleep. We spend more time working than when we're with our families. So if you're going to spend all that portion of your life doing stuff, why not do it with people that you like working with, both internally as well as the people that you work with externally? So that's really important to us. And that's also why this cultural thing is not just like internal, like when your culture's aligned with the people you work with and, you kind of have the same values, it really is, it creates the best possible relationship. And again, like I said, I'm too old to work with people that I don't like anymore and be a whipping, be a whipping boy, and really not even me, but more so our people. Like, it's just, we work way too hard. We're so passionate about our partners. We will do anything for them. So, we just want the same sort of, appreciation and common respect and solution-oriented approach from our partners as well. And I think we've done a good job finding some of the best partners in the world that you could have and having really fantastic relationships and, loving working with them both on a professional and a personal level. And, and if it does even go into a friendship, even better, right? So.
Well, I think that's a perfect way in full circle to wrap this up. Jed, I can't thank you enough, not only for joining me on the podcast, but for all that you do for the industry and people with disabilities and your employees. And I'm very excited to see, what you do next. And I'm sure I will see you at an upcoming event speaking either at Shop Talk or somewhere else. So I appreciate you so much and thank you.
Well, I want to throw that back in your direction because you do so much, and I am willing to bet most people don't know even half of it. I mean, you are such a influential and impactful person in this industry. Your passion for inclusion and your hard work with Unite Together has been incredible. You're kind of pivoted to DTF and your influence on this industry and creating a new DTF Expo and really like giving the foundation to this industry that had already started and had legs. And you've always been supportive of our mission. You've always supportive of me, and you're just a good forget good, a great all around human being. So I appreciate everything you do for the industry and you do for people. And for anybody out there who doesn't know it, you are always working and always doing awesome things. And I'm always excited to see what's next and appreciate our friendship that we've been able to generate to unite together, and excited that, DTF is kind of giving us another reason to get even closer. So it's very cool. And thank you again for having me. And we got to get you back, and we got to get you out to the facility sometime soon. The next time we do this, I want to do it at our facility, and that would be pretty cool.
Yes. Thank you, Jed. Yeah, you are on our list for our new shop tour video series. So the next time we're in Cleveland or anywhere, I guess, in the Northeast Ohio area, we will definitely be making a stop. So thank you so much. You're awesome.
You can find Stakes Manufacturing at stakesmfg.com and on LinkedIn. We'll catch you on the next episode of the DTF Printing Podcast. In the meantime, head to DTFprinting.com to discover new ways to grow your DTF print business. Thanks for listening.